Unceremoniously, the Jets season is now over, but maybe this needed to happen to usher in much needed changes. We'll talk about all of that on tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets.
You're Locked On the Hockey Jets, your daily podcast on the Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey friends, and welcome to tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Harrison Lee, an avid Winnipeg Jets fan and an online blogger. You can follow me on Twitter at HLLivingLoco and at LO_Winnipeg Jets. As always, thank you so much for making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on all of your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. Doing so, of course, is always free of charge and ensures you never miss another episode. Most of all, though, we just love and appreciate your support. Obviously, a lot of you are probably still reeling from yesterday's game. I know I'm still not over it 100%, but I think by the same token, let's be real. I probably was preparing myself for this, and I think we all kind of knew the direction the series was going. Still doesn't make it feel any better, but at least it wasn't a surprise that the Jets got ousted in 5 games, right? You know, I think the opening game kind of gave you those red flags, and then Georgiev basically finished off the rest over the next 3 games and 4 games as the Jets completely fell apart. We'll dive into some takeaways from game number 5, and you're not going to like them, but we'll get to those in just a little bit. Before we go any further, though, I want to let you know that tonight's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and be sure to use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Now, like I said, obviously, wow, Game 5 was a frustrating mess, and I think it was a culmination of everything that we've ever said about the Jets this year, all wrapped up into one game. Bones finally made the right line changes for half the game, and then in period 3, abandoned them, and Winnipeg fell apart completely. The Jets conceded 2 quick goals after scoring a game-tying goal earlier or something like that, and then, from there, things just seemingly came undone. Winnipeg ran out of steam. It looked like there were no answers on the bench, and I don't know, man. I just feel like it was all kind of a bit of a circular motion, I guess. We kind of went from what was promising to just complete bullcrap. I think that's the only way to put it, right? The first 2 periods, the Jets actually created some good offensive looks as the line started finding chemistry. The second period, they probably played their best hockey of the whole playoff series, which isn't saying much, but it was a lot better than some of the other games in which the Jets didn't even look competitive. Here, at least, they actually created offensive pressure. There was good stuff going on. Cole Perfetti had some really bright shifts. And then the third period comes around, and guess what? Bones has the lines back to right where they started. Perfetti's on the 4th line, and the Jets lose in embarrassing fashion. I mean, you just can't really make this stuff up. On top of that, you had Neil Pionk having an all-time worst game by his standards, an own goal, 2 or 3 giveaways that directly led to goals against, a PK or a penalty taken that was really dumb and ended up turning into a goal against. It's just stuff you really can't make up. I mean, I don't know what to say about this, but I mean, I'm probably even not remembering the exact order of events because obviously I'm still a little emotional after the end of that game. But I think the general vibe and general sentiment is the same, right? Whether the Jets lost in one instance or another, Winnipeg was, again, outplayed in critical moments and outcoached when the Jets had to have the right leadership. And I think it shows that for all of the good that Bones and the coaching staff have done at a very high level, especially with the overall defensive structure, Colorado basically undressed it in the span of 5 games. And that's bad. Hellebuyck had a rough series by his standards, although if you look at the sheer amount of crap that he was conceding and where it was coming from, it's kind of hard to blame him. I mean, he could have been better, but I'll be honest, I don't think Brossoit was really saving much more of that. Even if Brossoit saves maybe 1 or 2 goals, I think in general, the series outcome is the same. Whether they get to game 5 or game 6, really doesn't matter. The Avs basically curb stomped the Jets, and it was really a question of the margin that they would win by. So very tough series. I think Game 5 was a huge letdown after it promised to be at least a little more engaging. And for a bit, the Jets looked better, right, for a couple of periods. But then, the brain dead mistakes, Pionk having some horrible shifts, Hellebuck, doing his best, but still not able to stop every single odd man rush or whatever that happened. I mean, it's the same as it ever was. And I think that's maybe what really pisses people off the most is time and time again, we find ourselves in the same position. After last year's 1-4 out, here again, the Jets do it where they win the first game of the series and then 4 straight games of depression. So great. Awesome stuff. Congrats to everyone involved. But, I guess if I'm trying to find some bright spots, Morrissey looked good. The play of Perfetti looked good. He looked not out of place. Miller looked pretty solid in his game back. I mean, I'm grasping at straws here because, I don't even know what to say, right? For all of the positives and good that came out of this game, it was all basically undone as soon as Bones tried to go back to winning his way, when it's been proven time and time again that the way that he wants to win wasn't good enough. And maybe that was the point that he wanted to make. I don't know. He's said on record he would prefer to lose his way than trying to change his game, which is at least a very bold and committed thing to say. It is also a pretty clear indictment of the fact that he's very stubborn and very set in his ways. But at his age and with how he coaches, let's be real, he was never changing, right? So I think it just points to the team needing a change in perspective after the season. And he was asked about the club option, and he just said, we just lost a playoff game. So quite obviously, he's not thinking about retirement or anything like that yet. But if I'm the Jets and if I'm Bonus, I think mutually agreeing to part ways after the season probably makes the most sense. I think Rick has gotten the team about as far as he can get it, but his way is clearly not the way that a lot of the other parts of the league are moving. And you'll say, well, the Jets played so well in the regular season, and that is true. They did. But I think at the end of the day, the Jets need a more modern approach. I think we saw how much speed, passing, and good skating really made a huge difference for Colorado versus what the Jets had. Winnipeg's puck movement was a lot less precise. The passing was off. The skating was very sluggish. And every time the Jets got in a foot race, Colorado was always winning second chances to pucks. That is a huge difference. It made all the difference in this series. And Winnipeg just really looked like not even a second best. They looked like a fifth best series in a game in which there were only 2 teams. So not great. I guess if you could say that, if you're looking for positives, I guess it's over. We don't have to worry about some of the stupidity of the series going forward. But man, I really wished it had been a more positive outcome. I wished Game 5 had gone at least a little bit better. And I feel like it was a stunning indictment of how this coaching staff has been this year, where they'll have a good combo, but because it's not the way they want to do it, they go back to what they think works, even though there's a body of evidence that says it doesn't. And you can dispute whether the evidence for the other line combos and stuff really suggests and endorses having them in. But I think at the very least, we could tell it was probably better than the old combos of Connor, Scheifele, Velarde, and, whoever else. So I'm disappointed. I'm not mad. I just, I think I had this as a scenario that was the worst case in the back of my mind, but I kind of hoped that we'd avoid it. But instead, the Jets sailed right into it. So we'll talk about a brief post-mortem on the series, or on the season, really, not just the series, whether the season was successful, some key takeaways, and, what kind of comes next, because this offseason could be one of the most insane for the Jets we've ever seen. I know the Dubois trade was a big thing, but now we're also talking about contracts that are expiring either this offseason or next, and there's a lot to talk about with respect to that. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about that in just a moment, but before we go any further, I did want to shout out our friends and partners at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your vehicle alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. While we're at it, I also did want to shout out our friends and partners at Gametime. When it comes to buying tickets, a lot of you are used to surprise fees. Maybe you want to go to a game or a concert or something, and you find out that A, you're paying a lot of money and you get hit with even more charges that they don't really put up front, and B, you're not actually sure where you're sitting. Gametime knows the pain and offers you all-in prices and, when available, views from your seat in venue, which means you can actually find out if you're sitting behind a pillar. I'm sure those of you who have ever seen Fenway Park know that there's infamously a giant pillar blocking one seat. Maybe you're into that. Maybe that's what you're actually looking for, but I think most of you would actually prefer to see what you're going to. So Gametime is here to help. They have also become the authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which is great. You know, you have another option to choose from. And they also have prices that actually go down the closer you get to tip-off. They offer their lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, last-minute ticket deals, flash sales, zone deals, and so much more. So if you're tired of spending tons without really getting much in the way of an idea of where you're sitting, and if you want to make ticket buying a painless, seamless process, take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and be sure to use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Hello, friends, and welcome back to this episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Everydayers, thank you so much for rejoining us on tonight's episode as we are just, obviously we're taking a bit of an emotional step back from the ledge. I think, the last 2 weeks of Jets hockey have been a bit of a kick to the sensitive parts. Let's be real. I think all of us could probably do with a few months off from Winnipeg hockey. Fall is going to be rolling around before you even know it. I know that's probably not much of a comfort after you just watch the Jets basically get manhandled by the Avs, but, it is what it is. There's always a greener and brighter tomorrow, I guess. So, look forward to the future. We'll talk about some things that I think are more exciting down the road. Obviously, this year, I think in particular for the Jets was a real transition year. I want to talk about that for just a little bit, but before we go any further, just wanted to let you know something really cool the Locked On NFL Network has going. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft is available now. Find the ultimate 6-episode series on Locked On NFL Draft to hear who our experts are picking for every NFL franchise, with live reactions from local college experts and even the fantasy football angle. The Locked On NFL Mock Draft is available now on the Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Now, I just called this Jets season a transition year, and I think for me that probably surmises it the best. Look, Winnipeg was basically taking a shot in the dark when it hired Bonus, a guy who in many respects was supposed to be a vibes coach. Tactically, I'd heard a lot of complaints from Stars fans, and they were right in the end, but I think by the same token, we last dealt with Paul Maurice, who kind of did some of the same stuff. I think Maurice was probably a little bit more, maybe a little bit more creative and progressive in some areas, but in the sense that he'd throw lines into a blender without any real understanding of what clicked in those lines. And in a lot of ways, that was actually very similar to what happened with Bones. I think Rick understood high level how to make this team fun and physically aggressive and defensively sound. But in the end, the Avs kind of spent 5 games dissecting every part of the Jets' defensive zone structure, their breakouts, and it was really a masterclass in coaching and preparation on top of just top-level talent the Avs have that the Jets don't. And whatever the Jets did in the regular season didn't really seem to make that much of a difference. You then kind of go from that to further causing problems with Bones' in-game tactical awareness, and it just wasn't there. He didn't really have a good feel. He said he would make decisions based on his gut, and I gotta say, based on his gut, I feel like he doesn't have one, because a lot of the game feel and game flow I felt wasn't really picked up on by the coaching staff effectively. I think that there were many times where lines actually looked like they were doing a good job, but then they'd be split up a few minutes later, even though there was good evidence that it works better than some of the other combos. I mean, at the end of the day, that's kind of it, right? If you're trying to figure out ways to scrap out offense and keep this team flowing, if you know that there's a trio or a combination that absolutely does not work, you don't have to keep going back to it. It's not going to magically get better. Maybe they have some better shifts here and there. Maybe they score some goals. But if you know that the broader sample is that they're struggling, it probably doesn't make sense to keep going down to the same well and drawing rotten water. I mean, I just, for me, that's a common sense thing. I think the coaching staff tried to appease certain parties in the team. I think they tried to make certain combinations that in their heads sounded really great, but in practice, what did we get? Not much. And I think that's unfortunate. You had a great regular season that had some real big blips and red flags that maybe pointed to the Jets not being as good as you would expect for the playoffs. But I don't think anyone expected Winnipeg to completely implode the way they did in the postseason. Everyone from the coaching staff to Helly to an extent to the forwards and defenders, everyone pretty much got raked over the coals. And there was no one party that I would say was the sole reason, but I think a lot of it comes back to the coaching staff not really understanding this team's strengths and weaknesses. For one thing, Neil Pionk, being as bad as he was, didn't ever impact his ice time. In fact, he would have, own goals and stuff, and he would be right back out there the next shift, playing like 20, 25 minutes a night. Obviously, he wasn't playing 25 because that's more like Morrissey territory, but you sort of get the idea. He was a steadfast member of the blue line, and his struggles kind of killed Winnipeg's defense. Then, the answer to, your third pairing having an issue was to put Logan Stanley in. That was their solution. Why go with puck moving ability and guys like Colin Miller when you can have a guy who, unfortunately, is not built for speed? I think for every problem the Jets came across, they had the wrong way to fix it. And, at the end of all of it, their solutions to try and turn this Jets season around in the waning games of this playoff series really showed they never understood what was wrong with the team to begin with. Or even if they did, they just didn't understand the solutions. And so it's a tough job, right? Being an NHL coach is a very demanding position, and you have to use a limited body of evidence to try and make critical, game-changing and season-defining decisions. But at the same time, you see other coaches handle it well. Look at Jared Bednar. Jared Bednar has, honestly had Winnipeg's number in this series. I think he made the exact right adjustments, and the coaching staff that supports him seemingly did a great job of getting the Avs team into prime position. And I know the talent differential is clearly above what the Jets are working with, but Winnipeg should have put up a much better series than they did here. It's a shame, right? Winnipeg deserved better, the players deserve better, and the fans deserved better. The front office, I think, gave the team what they asked for, and it still didn't matter. Sean Monahan and Tyler Toffoli were just not good at all. In fact, at times, they were some of the worst players on the ice for me. I hate saying that, and I think it's not entirely their fault. I think this was a mismatch of a series, but, you needed them to step up more frequently, and they weren't really on the same page at any time. So as part of the offseason, I think we're going to see a few guys like them move on. And I know people are telling me you've got to re-sign Monahan. He's a great center and all, but I don't know how you can say that after what we just saw in the playoff run. The Jets need to get younger and faster. I mean, that's just the reality. Adding, players who are slower and heavier and not as mobile is actually what killed the Jets in the postseason. People are going to disagree with me, but I don't know how you can watch the way the Avs worked, both in the stretch plays, in the neutral zone, in the offensive zone, and imagine to yourself that speed isn't a huge need for this team. Winnipeg is going to have to find a way to get more mobile, and that includes both up front and on the back end. So a lot of questions to answer, a lot of, I guess, boxes to tick off. It's going to be a heck of an offseason. I'm going to be blunt. I can't even begin to tell you what's going to happen. I mean, I have some idea of a couple of key moves. I think that there's some things that I would like to happen. We'll talk about some of these in just a moment. Obviously, this rest of this week is probably going to be lots of unwrapping and trying to figure out the future. But before we dive into any of that, I did want to shout out our friends and partners at Monopoly Go. I have a competitive side, and you know what? We got to pause to talk here about something called Monopoly Go. And if you're wondering what Monopoly Go is, well, it's a great twist on the classic game that you can use to build up, great cities and properties with your friends. You can participate in timed tournaments, and you can work together to build up each other's boards so you can win big prizes. The more that you win together, the better the prizes you unlock. There's stuff to get, including stickers for a sticker album that you can actually trade with friends so you can complete your own album. There's new playing pieces that you can use for all of the diverse game boards. Like if you're a fan of the little dog that was always mine, you can take that one. There's other great pieces to use. Or if you want to troll your friends, there's also hilarious emojis that you can use to taunt your friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing content, tournaments, and challenges. They include their own minigames like digging for treasure or robot pachinko machines. There's always new timed events to help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go download it now for free on the Google Play or App Store. Game on. Hello, friends, and welcome back to this episode on tonight's episode of Locked On Winnipeg Jets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Sorry if I seem a little distracted. I suppose I'm just seeing tons of feedback after this Jets game, and wow, yeah, lot to unpack, obviously, but at this point, we've got to talk about the future, right? The team has kind of finished out what I would say was a transitional point under Bonus. And I think the hope with Bones was that at some point it would lead to a good playoff run with the current core. But I think we've seen that at the end of the day, this Jets team, whether it was the players or the coaching staff, just could not get it done. But that doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of good pieces to work with going forward. Despite the pain of getting embarrassed by Colorado, think about how the Avs got here. They had to suck tremendously bad to amass the talent that they have. The Avs spent like years and years in the wilderness. And it wasn't until Sakic gave up the reins that team really started to improve rapidly. So in a lot of ways, I think the Jets are off in a pretty good position, right? You're about to hit a transition point with the core where there's a lot of big decisions. I think the entire blue line needs a makeover, but that was kind of true at the start of the season, right? And one or two acquisitions probably wasn't going to be enough. That's where I think the Jets have a real opportunity this offseason to completely overhaul how this team plays. When it comes to defenders who should come back, in terms of extensions, I'd say Dylan DeMello and Colin Miller might be worth bringing back. DeMello especially, I think, DeMello in a more second pairing role or something might be beneficial to his aging curve. He's definitely slowing down, and I think that was abundantly apparent, but he's still pretty effective at what he does. He's a smart defender, and quite honestly, the Jets just don't have anyone immediately who can replace him. Eventually, I think that's going to be Elias Salomonson, but Salomonson is going to need some time to get up to speed in North America, and if you play him in a more third-pairing role next season or beyond, you can start to get him up to speed at the NHL level gradually rather than throwing him in the deep end. Maybe he hits it off with somebody like Morrissey immediately in camp or something, but I think, having come from SHL to, jumping up to the next level, it might take a little bit of time, right? You're going to see some rookie mistakes from him. He's going to take some time to mature and grow. But I do think of the future Jets D prospects, he remains the brightest. He's probably at least a second pairing guy. I don't know if I'd qualify him as first pairing, but he's been pretty dominant for his team that's on the championship run. So a lot to be excited about there, perhaps in a more low-key, understated way. Where the Jets probably really need to make a decision is Heinola. I think Vili's season should have been this year had he not broken his ankle. But now that the Jets are looking at Brendan Dillon perhaps walking in free agency and the need to frankly jettison Schmidt and Pionk, I think it's probably time for Heinola to finally get a spot. Ville has proven that he can handle the AHL level really well. He's shown excellent flashes in training camp, and had he not broken his ankle in preseason, he'd have been in the lineup, which I think would have been a nice benefit to the Jets. And Sandberg and Heinola have played before together. I think that could be a combo that you look at for the future. And look, it's not going to be like Heinola's going to be the next Cale Makar, but I think if you're looking for rapid mobility, maybe like a Sam Girard kind of player, Heinola might be that guy. One of the things that he does better than most of the Jets defenders is passing, right? Passing out of the back has been one of the biggest problems with this team. The Jets just constantly blindly fire pucks into opposing skaters. It gets turned over and ends up past Hellebuck. So moving that puck more efficiently with good vision and passing is a must for the future blue line. You also want just more skating mobility, and guys like Heinola and, to an extent, Sandberg, Salamonson, these guys are smooth skaters who can advance the puck in a pretty efficient way. Sandberg is a little on the heavier side for that kind of stuff, but he can still do it pretty well, right? A lot better than some of the other Jets defenders we're used to. Brendan Dillon wouldn't be the worst to bring back, but it's really dependent on his contract ask, right? And if he wants like a $5 million kind of deal, I'd say that's probably a no. Maybe they negotiate a short 3-year kind of deal, but I can't really see that happening unless he just really loves staying in Winnipeg. So a tough decision there. But one thing I do think is that Monahan and Toffoli have to go. I appreciate what they brought during the regular season, but during the postseason, they were really badly exposed. And I think they're just not the right fit for what the Jets probably need to do going forward. I think both have a lot of merit as individual players, but I think tactically and systematically, their fit was horrendous against the Avs. And teams like Colorado have really set a blueprint for how other teams should play. Look at how fast Vegas plays. They're a speedy team that has great download passing and honestly creates many of the same problems that the Avs do against the Jets' hardline matching. So that could be something to look at. I'd also say that you need to start moving out some depth players. Iafallo, Appleton, these guys have done, a real hard shift for the Jets, but I think it's probably time to move their salaries out. Iafallo's making like $4 million, and Appleton's making a little over $2 million. While Appleton's cap hit's not bad, you do kind of need to start opening up space because you've got some major extensions coming down the pipeline. And honestly, for all of the good that Appleton and Iafallo brought, they just didn't really justify their roles with the team. I think Appleton is a great fourth liner, but I don't think being in an elevated role on the third line was perhaps the best use of the space. So, it is what it is. Iafallo, I think he was really good on the PK, but at even strength, I was kind of left wanting with him. I thought he'd be a much more effective scorer, and it never really materialized. So I don't know what happened there, but maybe it's just the Jets not really being the right fit. He could definitely forecheck and do some stuff there, but I feel like for $4 million, I was expecting more like a Matthew Perreault light, and we never really got that. Rasmus Kupari, if the Jets cut bait, I don't really care. I think he had some okay shifts, but wasn't really anyone that I would say I was banging on the door to keep. Otherwise, Winnipeg's got a couple of guys who are definitely due up for an extension in the near future. I think, Nikolai Ehlers is probably going to get traded. That one's going to hurt like a humdinger. I can tell you right now, I'm personally not prepared for it, but I think Nick is on the way out. All the signs seem to be pointing that way. I think the Jets are perhaps suggesting he's going to be traded through some of the media sources. It wouldn't shock me. And if they move him for a D piece that's really quality, okay, I could be talked into it. But I just think that his underutilization with this team has been a huge disservice to the skill player that he is. And Bowness didn't really seem to appreciate what he had in him. So he'll join a long list of Jets coaches now that don't really seem to get it. That long list being two coaches in particular, Maurice and Bowness. Lowry also didn't really know what he had in him. So great. You had a guy who probably could have been a top liner for most teams and never really got the chance to do so. And now he just looks kind of lost in some of these playoff games. Pionk, though, that's a must. You've got to get out of that contract. I don't care if you have to pay somebody to take his deal. He's got to come off the Jets. He can't play another season here. I love him, and I think he's a great guy off the ice. And I think in terms of players who, really put it all on the ice, I do enjoy him, and I think he's a guy who has always been accountable. But if you can find a way to offload his contract, you're going to have to do it. You can't go another season with him playing for your team. I hate to say it, but it's just the reality. Nate Schmidt, I mean, if he sticks around, I don't really care. I mean, he's a good mentor for younger defenders. He's still got some juice left in the tank, even if it's not quite at the level that you'd hope. But Pionk, I think this probably has to be his last season. And it should probably be the last season for Bonus too. If Rick doesn't retire, I would still say that at the end of all of this, you got to cut bait. I think he's done a great job at rehabbing the Jets' image and getting them back into a more stable state after Maurice left. But after that, it's time to move on and start to really look for a progressive, more offensively minded coach who can lead this team in the future. Again, thankful for what he brought to the team, thankful for his overall insight into the defensive structure and unleashing Josh Morrissey, but this has to be a fond farewell, I would say. So the next few days, we're going to talk about more of this stuff. Obviously, I think I want to focus really on the future because I think the Jets have a much brighter future than people may realize. And I know the sourness of this playoff run is going to stick in your mind, but there's more to look forward to than you might think. But stay tuned for that over the next few days. For tonight's episode, though, that is going to be all the time that we have. I thank you so much for listening and making Locked On Jets your first listen of the day every day. We'll see you back here tomorrow with even more Jets coverage, so don't go anywhere. Have a great night, and as always, go Jets go.